Hello everyone and welcome to tonight's live stream. We are live doing a live class about online replication. And what can you expect from this live class? Well, you're going to see us live going through common things that people struggle with online replication wise. So we'll go through the basics first of all, and then we'll go into some good practices and things to better understand and best case uses for various different scenarios. I think this will go on for probably a bit longer than an hour, but we'll see how we get on. If you do have any questions regarding online replication, do feel free to put them into chat. I'll try and answer them as I go, and especially as we get towards the latter end of the class, we'll be able to answer more technical questions and showcase a few bespoke things that you may be trying to do. So, if you've never done, sorry, take my shoes off. If you've never done online replication before, don't worry. We're going to go through how it works, and hopefully try and build your understanding of it. And don't worry if you don't get it straight away. It does take maybe a few goes before you actually get it understood. Cool, blimey, everything's going. Hang on. There you go. So, don't worry. Yeah, don't worry if you don't get it straight away. It does take a little bit of time to get used to and understanding. And you build understanding by trying out new things yourself. So if you want to watch this back later, you can do while trying to make stuff. As I said, we're going to go through the basic and intermediate bits as well at the start here. So if you're really familiar with online replication, you may be stuff that you already know, but we'll get to more important bits thereafter. So hopefully everyone's doing well and strapped in. Let's go. So online replication. So if you make an online multiplayer game, Unreal comes with its own online replication framework, and to put it bluntly, it's pretty simple how to get started with it. So if you put in multiple player starts in, you're going to have multiple players spawn in. Now the way you test this out, which is going to be crucial to understand and to test this throughout tonight, is you have to change the number of players you want in this little 3-dot menu to 2, and your net mode to players listen server. When you do that, it will assign one of the player clients where you see 2 windows pop up in a second as the server, and it can replicate between the 2. So there we go. Okay, and I've got 2 characters in the scene. Okay, now a few things to note about this straight away. We'll be going through what is replicated automatically, what isn't. We'll be talking about how the game mode plays into this, how ownership plays into it, what the player state is, what the game state is, how they all work together with the player controllers, how to manage different players coming in as well. So right off the bat, as you can see, both characters will replicate their movement, and that's thanks to the default character movement character movement component, which is automatically replicated. And the way what it's actually replicating is just a translation of the player. And the animation is being handled client side by the client's animation blueprint. So one of the first things I get asked quite a lot of is, how do you replicate the animation blueprint? And the answer is, you don't replicate the animation blueprint. You replicate the variables and functions and things that trigger and feed the animation blueprint. And that's what you are replicating. And the animation blueprint just fills in the gaps. Okay. So that is how we're getting on here. So, yeah. So the first thing is to understand is all the different things you could have, like game mode, game state, and understand what each one does. So when I'm making a multiplayer game, well, if I'm making any game, I'll make a game folder, and in here I put a systems folder, and here I put in things like the game mode. So we'll put GM, we'll call it live class. So that game mode for the live class. And then I'm going to make the game mode, the player controller. So PC live class. Then I'll make the player state. So for that, you have to look in all classes down here. Player state. And we'll go through what they are and how they differ in a second. Live class. And you also want a game state. So down here, game state. And we'll do a game state base. GS live class. Okay, so you want to start off with these elements here, and we'll go into the game mode and assign all those elements. So over here, we're going to go to game state, change it to our game state, controller, player state, We'll leave the pawn as the third person character for now, and the rest is fine. Save, could close, done. So now we're running with our particular classes here. So what's yes, we'll be going over widget stuff. Yep. Trot bogus. Maybe not, but maybe. Depends how good you take it on board. So, okay. Anyway, I'm getting distracted by questions. I'm going to try not to do that too much. So, let's go through what each one of these does. So the game mode is run by the server. So whoever's hosting the game is the only one with the game mode. And the game mode is in charge in the multiplayer game of the connection between the players and the state of the game. Okay, and it determines when the game should end, how it should start, those sort of things. The player controllers are what are connecting to the game mode. So when you log in with your account, your player controller connects to a server. Okay, so on your side, all you have is your player controller connecting to the server. You don't have the game mode. However, what you do have access to is the game state. So the game state is a replicated, shared thing that everyone has access to. So think about it like this. There's one game state that everyone has access to. It doesn't necessarily work like that, but it's one game state that you're working towards, okay? And you can replicate to and from that. Important to note, though, the server is always, in all of these things, is always in charge. So the server has to be the one to replicate stuff. Clients can't do it, okay? If a client wants to change something that everyone else can see, they have to ask the server for permission, basically. And we'll go over that in a moment. So the game state is used for sharing things that everyone needs to know. So for example, the timer for the game. Yeah, how much time is left in the game. That way everyone can see the same time. Yeah. Events that are triggered in the game. So maybe like scores like towers being destroyed, things like that. Now, flags being controlled, team scores, things like that would be handled by the game state. Now, player controllers also have access to a player state. Now, the player state is a cool little thing because basically what happens is when you log in with your player controller, they come in with a player state. The player states are accessible to everyone. So a client only has access to their player controller, no one else's, not even the servers, that's just their player controller, but they have access to everyone's player state. So the player state is useful when you want to share personal information about your character, about your gameplay to other players. So, for example, your individual kill count or score, lives you've got left, or health. That sort of thing will be stored in the player state going across to other people. Okay? Very important. So, we'll go through that in a second and showcase how that would work. But the player state is shared across everyone. Now, remember, the server must be the one to make the changes in order for it to go across. So, let's go ahead and set up a hang on, let's answer this question while we're here, though. Can you go over game mode versus game mode base? Yeah, kind of. Yeah, so if I go to game mode, the only difference is that game mode base is a simplified version of game mode. And I personally prefer the normal game mode because it gives you a few more functions and things to mess about with. So the main thing you'll see is if I go to the override functions, here are the functions that belong to the game mode. Right? Pretty standard stuff, right? But if you go and change this to the game mode, you have more things. Okay, because you've got game mode base stuff and you've got game mode stuff. In particular, you've got things like ready to end match and ready to start match. These things are pretty useful when determining whether a game should be ended or beginning. Okay, so I usually will keep it as game mode for multiplayer games, but single player games, you're more than welcome to use game mode base. You can do multiplayer game mode base. It's just you have a few more options available to you in game mode. Okay, so let's go ahead and replicate something. So let's say we're going to put a health system on our game character, okay? Now, in a single player game, you may be tempted to put health on the player character, which you totally could do. Yeah, that's totally fine. But what you actually may find it better, as I mentioned, is put on a player state. So if I go to the player state, over here, and we go variables, and we put in health as a float. And important to note when you're doing replication, when you want to replicate a variable such as health, and you want other people to see it, you have to turn on replication down here. Now you've got two options. You've got rep notified or rep notify. Rep notify is better for things other than your alternative is to multicast. Rep notify is a lot more bandwidth friendly than a multicast is. So where possible, try to do rep notify, as they're pretty useful. Basically, what rep notify does is that when this value is changed by the server, it calls a function which is automatically created over here called onRepHealth, and that can be used then to trigger things like the UI things and other stuff like that. So yeah, so we'll start health here at 100. Okay. Okay, so that's one thing there. Okay, so the next thing is, okay, I want to do damage on my characters. Okay, so let's make them so I can actually do damage. I'm going to do a very simple combat system. I'm not going to do anything fancy. We'll just do the one key. And for this, I'm going to do a sphere trace by channel. Get actor of what am I doing? Get actor of I'm doing mine. Get actor location and get actor forward vector. So we can get the location and direction they're going. We'll put in a range of, I don't know, 1000. So it's not real. We're just doing a little test example here. And we'll add that into our sphere trace. We'll give it a sphere trace of 50 radius. And the trace channel, we'll change the camera based. Draw debug, I'm going to do for duration, so we can see it and while we're testing it out in game. And then on the hit events over here, actually, I don't want sphere trace by channel. Just realized I want sphere trace by for objects. That'd be better. Because things like walls, floors, things like that will also get blocked by that channel unless you set up your own custom channels. But an easy way of doing this is with objects and passing through the object types of pawn. Okay, so if you're doing a multiplayer game, you may want to do that. Draw debug for duration, plug all that in as it was. So same way you would put combat functionality in blueprint component that is attached to multiple actors in a single player game, you'd put that functionality in the player state. So the combat stuff you'd put in, like actual dealing combat, I'd put it in the actual characters stuff. But the health things I would put into player state. If I want other players to see my health, okay? If I don't care about other people seeing my health, then it doesn't matter. You don't care about that. But in this instance, I want to show how health is replicated, how a variable is replicated to the player states. So we'll do it this way. So we're going to sphere trace, and then out here, we'll break that open, and we'll apply damage to whatever it collides with. Okay, and we'll apply 10 damage. Damage causer, self, and that'll do. Okay, right. So this actor will receive the damage. Okay. So if I hit the other character, they are also going to receive the damage on this actor itself as well. So let's put in the any damage effect event. Now, what's unique about the damage system in Unreal compared to other events is that you see here we've got this little server icon. This means this event's actually only handled by the server. So we could send this across. Remember, this can only be done by the server only. Whoop. And only the server can handle the damage here. Okay, so if I'm doing a multiplayer game, I can't tie an input to ultimately what's going to be a server call. The problem with that is because inputs are going to be obviously local to you only. So again, you have to do that thing, we have to ask for permission. So we'll make a custom event, and this one we'll call server underscore attack and plug that in. And you want to replicate this over on the right here to run on server. Then when you push the 1 key, we're going to call server attack. Now, one thing importantly to note about these replicated events is this server attack can only be called from the owning client. So you can't call it from any event or any function. It has to come from the player who wants it to happen. Okay, it has to come from them who own the thing. And this is quite a common thing that people struggle with, and especially when it comes to things that are not directly tied to the character or the controller. And we'll be going through some examples of that in a second when you interact with other elements in the scene. But you need to do this setup if you want this to run on the server. So the attack's going to go across, and then this thing's going to receive the damage. Now, I want to apply the health damage to the player state of this thing here. So I could have like a health value in here and then copy it over to the player state. Could totally do that. But what I'm going to do here is get the player state of this owning character. Okay. So in here, we are going to get player controller. Get controller. And you'll see in here, you'll get no, ain't right. What am I doing? You want to get the any damage, get I need to get the owner. There we go, that's what I'm doing. Sorry, mine's going blank. So get the owner, and that'll give you which player owns this character. And then from that, this will give you the actor reference. So this will give you actually the controller. So this doesn't know this is a controller. It just returns an actor. So over here, we want to probably cast it to a player controller. So we'll do it to our PC live class. And then from there, we can get the player state. Okay. And I'm going to show you a better way of doing this, by the way. So this is like a direct route of doing it. Okay, so cast to player state, live class, and then I can affect the health value. Okay, so get health, and then subtract the damage. Okay, so this is, it'll work fine. You're casting 2 times, not the greatest, but it's not too bad because memory-wise, these things are already in the memory. So it's not the end of the world. But there is a better way of doing this. So here's the simple layout of getting towards this health component. And this is this is one direction of going to the health component, the health value. But let's say I want the health value to do the opposite thing. I want it to watch what's going on rather than anything else. So what I'm going to do over here is I'm going to put the health value, move that to the side, on my variables here, health, as well. Yeah, that's fine. And we're going to take the health, subtract the damage, and set the health there. Actually, do you need to do this? Don't think you actually need to do this even. Like, we could do. Nah, we'll be right. We actually don't need to do this. We can do it on the player state as a shortcut way. So on the player state here, I want to bind to the pawn that we are controlling. So I need to get the player pawn. And then from there, bind event on damage. Take any damage. Right into a custom event. Damage received. And there we've got damage value coming in here. So now I can get from the health, subtract the value of damage from the health, and send that back to itself. And because it's on a set notifier, it will go across to everything else. Now, the big thing to note about this is that I only want this to work on the server side, because remember, the damage event only runs when it's got the server thing. So on the event begin play for this, we're going to use something called switch has authority. And basically, this is all it is, a macro that just says whether or not this thing has the server authority or not. Is it the server? Essentially what's going on. So if it's the server, bind the event, and therefore the server is the only one that's ever going to do this and change the health value, therefore replicating it for every single person. Okay. So let's say now I want to show that health across to everyone. on the game. Let's do a very simple test with this and put some text on here. Text render, like that, and like that. And center align it. There we go. Actually, it'd be better to do it with a widget because I can show you widget stuff. Yeah, I'll do it with widgets. So I can show you widget stuff. Okay, let's go ahead and do widget. So, user interface, user widget, player HUD, and we're also going to have like player list or party we'll call it, and in part of that we'll have a party slot. So the party slot is just going to have like the player's name and things like that. So we're going to have in here a vertical box, going to have their name and a progress bar for the health. Just going to make these variable text player name, and we'll take the fill and bar health. There you go. And we'll set it up to 1 by default. Let's change the color of it as well. That'll do. Okay, so this graph here needs, we're going to assign this party slot to a player state. So we're going to go to variables and give it the player state variable. And in particular, actually, I could just give it the PS live class, my own custom player state. But I want to make this editable and exposed on spawn, like that. Okay, that's that bit. On the construct, then I can read stuff from the player state. I can get their name. You should do. Get player name. There you go. And we'll set that to there. Set text. I know chat's going on, by the way. I'm trying not to look at it too much, otherwise we'll never get anything done. So I will answer some questions in a second. Yeah, like that. And then the player state is we're going to listen out for when it changes its health value. So over here, we've got the health value being changed on health, on rep health. And I'm going to tell the UI to look at it when that changes. So let's make an event dispatcher on health update, and we'll send over the health value, and we'll plug in health. So back on my party slot widget, I can drag my player state out, and I can now bind an event to that health update. It's worthwhile as well, if you're curious, when you look at player state and you do the bindings, have a look at the things you have access to. So, for example, you can bind when a pawn has been set. So when a pawn's changed because of repossession or something like that, you can get that and make it re-grab all the bindings if you want it to. So, yeah, have a look around that. You'll see lots of interesting things that you can access to. So I'm going to bind on health update, and we'll do update health. And drag out the bar, set % to the health normalized to range. Normalized to range just squishes it down so it fits between 0 and 1. So I put in my minimum and maximum that it could possibly be. So 0 and 100 health. Therefore, it's going to give me a fractional decimal of what it is as a percentage. Okay, that's all done here. Next, let's go to the party screen. On the party screen over here, this will be a vertical box, like that. It's editable. so we can actually insert party slots into it. So we'll do box party. And on the graph, we want this thing to grab all the player states that are available to you in the game. Now, the way you do this, if you get player array, and if you, I'll show you a little trick as well, because I always forget as well. If you turn this off, you'll get the game state base as the option for this. So you know that you now need to get the game state in order to get the player array. So get game state. And this is a built-in thing. It keeps track of all the player. I think these are player controllers. No, these are player states already. Handy. Do that. And then on the construct, we can do a for each loop. And for each one, we need to cast them first to the player state we're using. And then we're going to create the widget of the slot. Plug in the player state. Then add the slot to the box. Like that. Okay. And that'll build out our list of people in our game. I'm just going to add a little padding around this whole entire thing. So do 30. Something like that. And I'll go to my player HUD. And we'll just add it to a single canvas panel on the screen. So if you're doing like a co-op game, you can see your teammates' statuses. That's the idea behind this. Okay, we're all done with this. Now where to put the HUD? Now a good place to put the HUD is on the HUD class. So this is something I also do, is I go into my all classes, search for HUD, and call it live class. And on begin play here, I'm just going to do create widget and do player HUD, and then add it to viewport. Okay. Okay. Compile, save. Okay. Okay, so yeah, got that. That goes across to that. And away we go. So that's all going to be connected up like that. I need to tell my game mode to use that HUD class. So let's go into here. Use the HUD class there. And that should be it. I think we should see the HUD appear on the screen or not. It may well be. UI, player HUD, party, construct for each loop. So you may need to tell this to wait a little second for everyone to connect. So I'm going to test that theory out. Use a delay node. If that is the case, then we'll have to put in a event for whenever someone connects. So do that. Oh, actually can't release your one. Yeah, what's going on here? It is got your one. What's happened? Yeah, hard. Let me just make sure this is working. I'll just put some text on it. Like that. No. Okay, what would be why? Oh, I know why. The world settings are still using the old game mode. There you go. Give it a second. Oh, it's frozen a little bit. Oh, 1 second. Why is this frozen? Why is my whole internet frozen? Can't tell. Why did that freeze up? That's weird. The client one is frozen for some reason. Let's try. What's going on there? Give it that now. For some reason, the client one is freezing. On the login credential, we don't need to log in credentials. Yeah. Okay. Player 1. Player 2. Shouldn't have to do this though. Yeah, see, the server one works, but the client one's not. Why would that be the case? Oh, I've got it there. What have I messed up? Listen. It was working just fine. Yeah, there's a lot to it. This multiplayer stuff. It's definitely quite advanced to do. I don't get why this is not. Why it's freezing one but not the other. That makes no sense. It could be replication timing issue. It should be. It was just working just fine with the other game mode. Oh no, it wasn't, was it? But it was. Maybe if give it a longer time. It was working. As soon as we started the thing, it was working. So I don't know. Nothing. We ain't done nothing extravagant. No, shouldn't, we haven't done nothing to logins or IDs. It should be just replicating, and it was working just fine right at the start of the session. So, and I've done nothing in regards to that. I think. Again, we didn't have to like. It's working just fine for one, not the other. So it should, if it's going to break, it should break for both. I don't know why that's decided to stop working. Done nothing. There's nothing in here holding it up, is there? One server attack. Master player controller. So maybe one thing I definitely want to do is put this mapping input probably on the player controller rather than the player pawn. I'll do that anyway. But I don't think that's the issue. Why are you doing this? There's the attack. So that works, but server logged in, client logged in. Just fine. No, program this. That was the server that's working. The one on the left here is the server. The UI spawned in just fine. This client hasn't spawned in correctly at all. The controller spawned in because the camera's changed, but as soon as it spawns in, it's not reading. Get rid of that stuff now. Oh, I know why. No, I don't know why. I'm gonna double check something. We'll try that because I changed the game mode rather than game mode base. No. I'm gonna change back to game mode for a second. Game mode base. So I'm gonna change it back to game mode base rather than game mode. That might be the issue. If you're doing with the full like session finding thing, game mode would be better than game mode base. So I shouldn't need to do that. There you go. Right. So the server, the server here is running around. As you can see, they've only got one bar on their health, whereas the other player has two. Now, the reason why that's the case is because the client came in after the server. Therefore, the server's only got itself on there, whereas the client's got the server and its friend on there. But just to show you that the health should be working, there you go. You see the health bar going down? Well, I don't know why it's going down for both. We'll come across that in a second. There we go. We can see that stuff happening there. Now, I need it to tell the server when a player's joined to refetch any new player characters joining the game. So a good way of doing this is telling the game state when a new player has joined the game, and you determine that via the game mode. So that's handled by something called the post login event. This is when a new player joins a game, hence the new player part. And a good thing you try and do is you keep track of all your player controllers and other things in here, but I'm not going to worry about that for now. That'd be another session down the road. All I'm going to do now is do an event dispatcher on here. On player joined. I'm going to drag that in, call that. And I want to pass through the player controller that's joined in. So I'm going to go to player joined, add the player controller. Bum, 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 bum. Just call it controller. And put that. Oh, wait, refresh that. Bum, bum. Okay. Then you have to go to the game state. So go to the game state. And if you look in the functions for game state, they have nothing special in them. So they don't have anything like post logins or anything like that. So be aware of that. Post login gets called only once per session when a new player joins the session. Handle new player gets called during several travels. Post login works as well for throughout. It's just when anyone joins the handle new players is slightly different. So handle new player. I don't know actually. It should post login does definitely work during the game. 100%. But you do have the handle new player, start a new player here. So the players ready to enter the game. Maybe they just called before post login. Don't know. Never really use it. I just click post login. Usually when they join the game, that's when I want them to join up. But anyway, go to game state, and in the game state on begin play, we're going to do switch has authority. Oh, I spelled wrong. There you go. Switch has authority. So begin play this part only runs on the server. Get game mode. And we can bind. Oh wait, no, I've got cast it too. I don't think there is a binding already in here. No. So we're going to do cast to game mode live class. And create bind event on player joined. I don't all capitalize. There we go. Okay. Oh yeah, post logging only gets called once per player. It's called for each player during each server trip. Yeah. Usually when you do server, I guess you say. It depends on what you're doing with it. Yeah. Okay. I guess I see the point. So there's another one you use when you do swap player controllers. When you do server traveling, you're going from an old player controller to a new player controller. And that's really useful if you're going from like a loadout screen going into a like into the actual game. But I'm guessing I know what you're saying is if you're going into like a sub map, you do handle new player. So they're not a new player controller. You're just dragging them into a new area, I guess. But yeah. Anyway, so back on this bind event on server joins. Player joined here. Get controller. I want to get the player state from that now. And I want to cast to my particular player state. Live class. And I have to cast it to a player state because controllers aren't replicated. Okay, so, but player states are. So I need to convert it over to a player state reference so I can now tell all the players that, hey, this is a new player state in the game. So we're going to do that. So I'm going to go to event dispatchers and go on player joined. And we'll get PS live class player state. And I need to compile it. Whoops, compile. Call that in there. Okay. So the server is going to do this call on player joined. Oh, sorry. This also needs this on player joined here. It needs to be replicated. So you can replicate event dispatchers, and it should tell everyone else to fire off their event dispatchers. Okay. So do that, and let's go back to the UI. Go to the party, and on the construct we're doing this. I'll give it this delay now. Don't really need it. And what I'm do on the completed of this is I'm going to get the game state, which again everyone has access to. I'm going to cast to the GS live class. Bind event to player on player joined. New player joined. And I've got the player state now coming through here. So now I can just take this part and add the player state to it. So hopefully, if I've done it all right, we should see them update. The server updated, but the client didn't. Damn it. So that delay probably going to be handy. Let's put that delay in. Usually, when you're using the game mode, you usually pause in the game before it starts. Not even pause in the game. You'll take not to start the match, and then you wait for everyone to join. And then once you do that, then this will be fine because it's got all the players. But we're not doing that in this case. We're just spawning them live. There we are. Okay. So server now applying damage to things. And is it working? It was working before, so why is it not working now? Oh, interesting. It works on the client side, but not the server side. Okay, let's work that out. So let's go to the player slot. Construct. Get the player state. Yep. Player name. That's working correctly. Bind event on update health for player state. Oh, I need to tell this to replicate. I didn't tell that to replicate, did I? So let's go back to the player state. And on health update, replicate that. Although it shouldn't do because that should come through here. Don't know. confused by that now. Definitely messed something up. Names are correct, so the player state's not the issue. It's interesting that the server doesn't do it, but the client will. And it affects both of them for some reason. Why? Why? That should be fine. It's confusing me because the name's correct. And if the name's correct, then this should be correct. Player state. Yeah, that is definitely that reference. Yeah, so I originally I shouldn't have to replicate health update because that is being replicated on this on Web Notify. So that should go across to that. Let me print string, see if it's something weird. So I'm very confused that the server's not doing it. If anyone should do it right, the server should be the one. Yeah, why is that not happening? Client, server, yeah. I'm confused. Let me go back to the player character. Let's go back through this. So when I push 1, the server is attacking. So server attack. Exits on server. We're seeing that. Applied damage goes through here just fine. In your player state, you're using my in that move. I am. That'd be why. Thank you. Get pawn. That's the one I want. Yeah. It's still not working there. Well, that's working there. So, okay, back to just the problem of the server doing it. Okay, so that's half the issue. Where the client can do it just fine. Yeah, that's working fine. So why? Hold on. Okay, so this is okay. So the classic problem that you have with online, especially online multiplayer, is something we call race conditions, and that's the problem you have with events. So events are prone to race conditions where you could fire off multiple events and they could happen before something else has properly been initiated, loaded up properly, things like that. So you may find yourself doing a little cheesy thing. You've got 2 cheesy things you can try and do. You can delay this, so this happens after the fact, or you can put in a thing in here where you go get pawn is valid and put that in authority. If it is valid, great, move on. If it's not valid, you do a little delay for 0.5 seconds and put back on to that. And you get this sort of loop behavior until it gets the pawn. This isn't the greatest way, but it'll work. Because what you'll see now is what was happening was the player state was spawning before the player pawn was. So you led to that issue. So now it works. Yeah. Okay. So I can now see those changes happening there live. Okay. yeah, so to recap what happening is there, basically the player state, the player controller, all that gets spawned in a sequence. Nothing gets spawned in, well, it doesn't get spawned in the correct order that you want. So it's kept at the very start. This get pawn was returning null. It hadn't got a pawn yet. It wasn't controlled. It wasn't possessed yet. So what you could do rather than begin play is we'll do on pawn set, and we'll do begin play there. That'd probably be a better way of doing this. Do switch as authority, pawn set. I can just put that in there, I guess. I don't need to do this valid check. Get rid of that. And oh, again, you only want to bind on the parent, on the server. Sorry. There you go. That'll do. And that should work as the same, because now it'll wait for it to get a pawn first before it does the binding. Okay, so we should see that working better now. Yep. Nope. Primary property, new pawn. It should be set. Otherwise, you can also get the player controller. No, that's fine. Get player controller. Target is player state. That's what you want. And bind event on possession. Possess pawn changed. Do it that way instead. Pawn possessed. New pawn. Try that. It really doesn't want to do it, does it? It wants to wait. It doesn't understand it. Okay, little delay is the way we're going to have to go. It still hasn't been set correctly, which is weird. But never mind. It might be that the player controller's not valid. Oh no, it didn't. It said the pawn wasn't valid. No, what did it say? Hold on, I can't remember what it said. Whether it's a pawn or the controller. New pawn. Yeah, okay. So yeah, a little delay will solve a lot of issues. 0.2 seconds, which should be fine. And that stops those race conditions from happening. Although that's not working now. Gordon Bennett. Why? Screw it, we'll just put it back the way it was. Get pawn. At least it worked. Race conditions are the one of the biggest bugs you find yourself having to solve in multiplayer games. Just because you need stuff to load up in a certain order, ideally. But yeah, anyway. Anywho, let's recap what's going on here. So, and how replication is working here. So we've got the player state. Remember, the player state is replicated to everyone. So everyone knows about everyone's player state. I can see everyone else's. I just can't see their player controller. And everyone can see the game state, but no one can. Only the server can see the game mode. The server can see every player controller as well. So if you want something to be announced to everyone, you can do that via the server, via their game mode or whatever. Okay. So let's now go to something like the game state and set up a timer for the match. Okay. So we'll say on begin play of this, we'll do set timer. by event, and we'll go and custom event that end of timer, whatever. And we'll set a timer here for 60 seconds. And return value will promote variable here. Now this variable, timer handle, call it, you want this to be replicated. Okay, so this gets set across to everyone. And in particular, it should be fine. Now we'll just do print string there. Go across to that there. Now, on the HUD, let's see if we can get hold of that information. Player HUD, text, I'm going to anchor it to the top center, and make that variable, text timer. Make it a bit bigger as well for everyone to see, and center align it. Like that. Okay, so on the construct for this, we're going to get the game state, and from there cast to our game state, and from the live class we can get the timer handle like so. And I want this timer handle to pass through, and well, it should be okay to just run on its own. I don't think I need to update it all the time. So I just need to store a reference, or not store reference to it, store reference to the game state, like that. And then on the text timer here, I want to update this all the time. You can do it every tick or every second. For now, I'm just going to do tick, just so you can see the milliseconds happening. So text timer, we'll do set text. And I don't need that. We get the game state reference and the timer handle. Get timer handle. Remaining, put that into there. Okay, let's see if that matches up, hopefully. No, okay, so obviously this timer's working fine. That's the server. This one didn't. -1 means it's valid, so I've messed up somewhere there. Let's go back to what I've messed up. It might be just the timer. You can't make replicate. I can't remember what their replication works that well. It should do. Can't remember. Switch as authority and timer handle. It's already on there. That works fine. Doing that fine. Yeah. That happens there. That's being replicated. On the construct, game state, get game state. I'm gonna do a little. It didn't have any errors saying it was invalid, did it? This part, it just said that this was invalid, didn't it? Double check that. Yeah. So because it didn't come up with the invalid warning for this game state live class on like the tick event, that means that this is valid. It's just this isn't. So I'm curious as to why that's not replicating. It should be. I thought timer handles did replicate. I might be mistaken. Game mode. Timer handle. I guess, yeah, you'd have thought they would replicate, but yes, we could just replicate the float instead. Yes. I'm gonna double check. Oh, bless me. Replication. Oh, I guess they're not replicated. Okay. Yeah, you have to replicate. Okay, you have to replicate the float. Weird that they don't grey out this replication then. I guess they don't have that built into the bit. Anywho, okay, so we need to replicate the timer handle here. So what I'm going to do is do... we need to do a frequency, because you don't want to replicate it all the time. And it's not ideal either, because it's going to be latency bound as well. Poo. Okay, so you don't want to do it on tick, obviously, because you don't want to replicate on tick that often. Time in seconds we'll have here. That'll be the float that we're going to replicate. Replicated. I'll do rep notify. That'd be fine. Time in seconds. I guess I could just do another timer that just updates this every so often. Yeah, I guess that'd be... Oh, timer, yeah, exactly. Just what I said. Yeah, that'd be the best way of doing it probably. Update timer. And we'll do that every half second. That'll be fine on a loop. And on update timer, we're going to get timer handle, remaining time in seconds. Do compile, save. Okay, back on the HUD then, rather than using timer handle, we just get the timer seconds, or what is it? Seconds? Time in seconds. Put that in there. Yeah. Can't tell the... But pretty close. Okay. To simulate that better, probably be best as well on two text here, is we're going to have 0 fractional digits and just do this two text thing. If you want to make it look more like timer text, by the way, use a format text node. And you put in parameters, minutes, colon, seconds, and use two text nodes in here from float. And these you want to set to be minimum integral digits to 2, fractional digits 0, and put that there. And I want to take that, copy that, put that into seconds, and you take time in seconds, divide that by 60 to give you the time in minutes, and then modulo 60 to get the time of the seconds. And yeah, done. And because we've got those minimal integral digits set to 2, you get a timer like this. Now the 0, 1 is happening because I set the timer to be it'll round up on the to text here, rounding mode, half to even. So you can just do be half to 0, no, 2 0. Yeah, that would be 2 0. It should round it down to 0. Yeah, there you go. Okay. Okay. So yeah, and obviously you do all the things you need to do with the timers when they end, blah 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 blah. But as I don't want to spend too much longer on this, the next thing I want to show is how to interact with stuff that isn't the player isn't player controlled. So let's say I want to interact with an area, but I want the player who enters the area to have control over what happens. Okay. So try to think of an example. Okay, so I'll make a widget for this, and we'll do a little widget mini game type thing. So we'll call it mini game, and in here I'll just do a very simple border with a button in it, and we'll put padding around it of like 300. Oh, there you go. Background color to 0. Oh, of the border, not the button. Brush color 0. There we go. So I'll make a little mini game that I have to hit the button. All right. Okay. Obviously, pretty simple. You wouldn't actually do it like this, but we just need something to come up on the screen that's triggered by something else. So in here we'll do on construct. We're going to get the player controller, and on widgets you can get the player controller player index 0, which is the local controller, because if it's appearing on your viewport, it is local to you. Okay, so this is going to be relevant to you only. So get player controller. You're going to do then set input mode UI only for now, and set show mouse cursor like that. Okay, and on the button on clicked, I want to set off an event for this thing to happen. Right, so I'm going to go to event dispatchers and create on completed. Okay, so they successfully completed the puzzle, whatever it may be, gets called. Okay, like that. Okay, and then on here we can also then remove it from parent like that, and on end play, not end play, on destruct, I can put it back to how it was. So get player controller, set input mode to game only, set show mouse cursor, and turn it off. Okay, so when I add it to the screen, it's going to change the input mode. When I hit the button, it's going to remove it and set the input mode back. But it's going to, I'll report back that I've completed the mini game, whatever it may be. Okay, so what I want to happen is I'm going to make a little thing in here, a little blueprint class. We'll do BP mini game, and I'll just do a simple we do a cube, take it to overlap all, and I'll say that when this thing is had overlap here, on that to begin overlap, I want it only to do this on the I want to tell the player controller who walked into this that they have triggered the event. Okay, they've triggered the mini game. So there's a few things you can do, because this blueprint is not controlled by anyone. It's controlled by the server only. You can't do things like for example, I can't do create widget, minigame, add to viewport. I can't do that. Okay. This is going to happen for everyone, which I don't want to happen. Okay. So if I want this to only happen to the character that's on here, I have to get the controller of this object, right? So I can get the controller of it. Get the controller. Should be able to. Not a pawn. Okay, hang on. So if I get other actor, cast to pawn, and then get the controller. Get controller. Okay. I want to tell the controller that I want them to do this. Okay. But I can't do something like have a custom event in here, say server add minigame. I can't do that. So if I run it on server, then it's going to add the widget to the viewport of the server, which I don't want to happen. I can't make that run on owning client because the client does not own this. Okay. And I don't want to multicast it because I, again, don't want it to appear on everyone's screen. I only want to play on one person's screen. So one of the easiest things to do is to make it just appear via the controller itself. So this create minigame thing, we are going to set up on the controller. So if I go to the systems over here, player controller, and we'll make a function in here called start minigame. And I'll go back to my active begin overlap over here. I can get the controller. Oh, sorry, I wanted to actually make that an event, not a convert function to event. There you go. And I want to say on the controller, once I've cast to the correct controller, yeah, that'll be fine. Get from here and say start minigame. Okay. Now, remember, controllers are ran on the server and themselves. So at the moment, this will run for both the server and the client. However, what I can do is start with start minigame is because the player controller is owned by the client, I can say run on owning client. So we can do a client call to start the minigame. Okay. And away that goes. Now, that's all well and good, but I now need to communicate the minigame back to the blueprint minigame. Well, for that to work, I need to know the blueprint itself. So the blueprint minigame over here needs to pass through the actor. So I'm going to go to that client here, add to this, we'll just do minigame blueprint, there you go. This is a way of doing it, by the way. There's multiple things you can do. You can actually set the ownership on stuff if you wanted to, but it can get messy because you were dealing with delays and things like that. So you may not like to do that, but you can set the ownership of something. But remember, only the server can set the ownership on something. Oh, didn't compile it there. There you go. Right, so this client is going to send over the minigame here. The minigame widget is going to appear here. I can bind event on completed like that, and I want this now to call a custom event on here, minigame completed, which then calls another custom event, which is a server based one, minigame completed, and that be ran on server. Because again, the server has access to your player controllers. So minigame completed over here, we call that server minigame completed over here. I just need to know which minigame it is. And so I can just promote that to a variable if I wanted to. Like that. Actually, it might be better to pass this through as a server first. Hang on. So I'm going to change that. It's a server. Oh, hello. Server. Start minigame. Store that on the server. And then do a custom event. Client. Start minigame. And that'd be own on client. And this one would be run on server. So the minigame calls this one. That then will call the client. The client will do their minigame, report back to the server on the player controller that the minigame is completed. And this belongs to the server, so it has access to it. And I can tell the minigame here that it's been completed. So make a custom event in here saying, well, I'll tell you what, I'll make a variable in here, is complete. And we'll make that a rep notify. And on the rep notify event, I'll just change the material of it. So cube, set material to something pink. There you go. Okay. Server start minigame. Okay. So the server is storing it, telling the client now to play the minigame. They play the minigame. They tell it when it's completed, and they tell the server, like, hey, I've done my job. I've got, now go back to the minigame and tell it to be set is complete to be true. And of course, on rep notify, it'll call the rep notify and change it for everyone. That's the theory of it. So if I put this into my scene, I'll make it a bit bigger. Like that. Oh, also, if you want it replicated, make sure you tick replicated on the actual actor as well. If you don't, the amount of times I've spent ages trying to fix bugs, and all it was I didn't turn on replicate, is too many. Replicated events and functions don't work unless you got that ticked. Just FYI. Okay, so let's do it. Yeah, there's a server. We'll walk into here. Oh, I need to tell the controller to stop moving. But there you go. It worked for the server, and away they go. Like, update for everyone. But you saw the button only appeared on the server side. I'm going to tell the character to stop moving. I forgot to do that. We'll just do... No, I can't do that. We'll just go... Control. There we go. Get player character. Stop movement immediately. There we go. Right, now let's do it to the client side. So the client will now walk into it. Oh, right, don't stop then. Hit the button. And it's turned it purple for everyone. Oh, it hasn't got rid of the screen. Why did it not get rid of the screen? Oh, I did edit twice. Hold on. Begin overlap. I want this to happen only on the server side. Do that first. Ooh. There you go. Yeah. So now we've got something like where a player, a client can interact with something in the world that's not related to them whatsoever, and then it can communicate to other players that something's been done to it. Okay. Now, just to make it clearer what's going on with the player controller and the sort of flow that happens here, is the minigame on the server side is telling the controller that, hey, start your minigame. And that's the server version of it doing that. Okay, so the server version of the controller is saying to the client now, start your minigame. So basically, imagine I'm the server and the client's over here. I've been told, oh, I've got to tell my client version of myself to do the minigame. So like, off you go, do the minigame. And then once they're done, they're going to tell me, oh, you're done? Brilliant. I'll pass it back to the minigame itself. Okay, the server's in charge of everything. So it's going from 1, 2, 3. Okay, so it's getting that full loop back. And it works pretty well, do it like that. And it's not the only way. You can do things like change ownership. But I find ownership changing gets pretty messy. So you don't need to worry about that too much. But yeah, you could do so. Yeah, oh yeah, there you go, program this, yeah, just did it, yeah. Do you use C++? Sometimes, yeah, when I need to. Can you move, oh, sorry, there's not much in the details pane to see anymore. Be fine. Get own, no, I don't know what I was referring to now. Okay. So a lot of doing with multiplayer is a replication of multiplayer, is dealing with the management between the player state, player controllers, game state, game mode. That understanding of that relationship will help greatly. Okay. And that will get you a lot further in your multiplayer game design. So spend some time trying to figure it out and understand it, and try to make different types of multiplayer experiences. See something in a game that you like playing and try replicating it yourself, pardon the pun, to see if you can also make it work in a very shortened sort of fashion. And yeah, and you eventually pick up a lot of tricks and tips along the way. Like my first multiplayer games weren't good at all. They're very like rough, where I was just passing messages back and forward, and we started getting better at it. I know that there'll be smarter ways of doing things I eventually come to, and when that happens, I'll do another live stream. You know, whatever it may be. But over here, we can tell the start mini game. Boom, off we go. If you're obsessed with like not using cast all the time, like casting to pawns and like this is not a problem, because these things are always going to be loaded in memory. So it's not the end of the world. The act of actually casting it may be expensive, but it's on overlap, so it only happens once. So I'm not too worried about it here. If you really wanted to, you could do it as an interface if you like, because you're just getting controllers and things like that. So you can just do that if you want. But yeah, there we go. Like Fortnite. What? Eh? Like a tutorial series on a Left 4 Dead style game. I'm following different programmers, but it feels messy. How is it messy? How does it? What makes it feel messy? Like the online part, or like the enemies part? Any other questions, by the way, about any of these or any sort of replication things? I tried to cover the main things I see people asking how to replicate. But is there anything else that I'm missing that people don't know how to replicate across? I'm trying to think what else people have asked about. Okay, so you could replicate Fortnite. I mean, yeah, you could, totally could. The AI is hard coded on, like if you are doing like a battle royale type game, yeah, you totally could. You think about a game mode, a game state, and player states all work together in that. So try and make a small version of that if you want, to see if you can make that work. Yeah. What do you do if you have a cinematic environment and want to make it compatible for gameplay, like optimizing textures and stuff? Do check out the optimization videos I've done. They cover things about optimizing textures and models and collisions, things like that. they should go across about that. Have you covered how to replicate sounds? Sounds don't get replicated. The events that trigger the sounds get replicated. Same as animations. You replicate the event that triggers it. How would you spawn projectiles using projectiles component? Yeah, it's the same as anything else. Spawning wise, I did mention that actually. When it comes to spawning, if you want other people to see it, the server has to be the one that spawns it. So, for example, if I make a little projectile, I'll make a very slow moving projectile. BP projectile. And we'll just put that as a sphere. Like that. And I'll tell this thing to we'll do custom, and we'll take to ignore pawns for now. Let's block everything else. And give it a projectile movement. Okay, and I'll make it go slow so we can test it for easier. So we'll do like 300 by 300, and I'll turn gravity off. Like that. Okay, so the main thing is, again, this always trips me up. Make sure you tick replicates. Otherwise, when the server spawns it, no one else will see it. So you want to make sure it ticks replicate. And then when the player pushes the 1 key on their system, or like in this example, when I'm doing the 1 key, we had this server attack. You just do it here, because it's server that's doing it. So spawn actor, choose projectile, spawn transform, get actor transform, always spawn ignore collisions. Okay, and away it goes. But because it's been ticked to replicate, we should see it now on everyone's screen. And the server is the one that's doing it. So that's the main thing that matters. So when the client does it, we see that ball flying across the screen. Okay. When the server does it over here, they'll see the ball flying across the screen. That camera thing, by the way, you're seeing is because of the spring arm. It's affecting the spring arm. Okay. So the server is replicating it across to the client, and the client has its own version then flying across the screen just fine. Okay. Yeah, that's it. Next question. Yeah, we had this UE5 series replicates that content, so you can see what's inside that content. Made a flashlight, but made it replicate, but the client can't see the rotation from up and down. Oh yeah, okay, that's a good one. Oh, we moved more than one player at the same time. We don't have time to do that today. But maybe we do that another live stream. But I will go through the flashlight thing, as that is kind of important. So, you may do a thing where on your camera, let's say, like for first, I'm guessing you're doing first person because that would be the way it's handled here. Let's just say this cube here is my flashlight, just make it super clear what's going on, right? And I put that there. Now this is attached to the camera. Let me turn occlusion off on this as well. No occlusion. Oh. So this is attached to the camera. So on my local view, the box is going to move, but as you can see, it doesn't move up and down on the server view. Okay. Now the reason why that's the case is because the camera is following the pawned control rotation, and control rotation is not replicated. However, what is replicated is the aim rotation. So you can make this update its rotation based upon the aim of the whole actor thing. So the camera boom here, because it's attached to the camera boom, I have to move the camera boom. Because you see here, it's using pawn control rotation. I'm just going to say to this thing, I need to basically tell. If you're doing first person, this ain't a problem. If you're doing third person, it's a bit more of a problem, because you don't want to use pawn control rotation, but you also don't want to inherit pitch, yaw, and roll. So you have to turn all these off, but only if you're not the owner of this thing. So on begin play of this character, we say is locally controlled. Actually, I'll put on possession. Actually, no. Control begin play, because everyone needs to see it, doesn't they? Is locally controlled. Put that on there. If it's true, I want to. Sorry, if it's false, I want to tell the camera boom to not use the pawn control rotation. Okay. So set use pawn control rotation to false, and same for the other ones as well. Set inherit pitch. If again first person, you don't have to worry about this because it's literally just a third person problem. But nonetheless, I'll show the same problem, how you solve it. Inherit the roll, and the yaw I'm actually going to leave alone. The yaw I can leave in. That's totally fine. So the main thing you want to fix is the up and down, the pitch. So the way you do that is you can't replicate control rotation because control rotation is tied to your controller, which is just yours. But you can manipulate the aim rotation, the base aim rotation. This is set by the controller, and this is replicated across. Okay, it doesn't actually say that's replicated, but it is replicated across by default. And so what I could do is tell the camera boom here to set the rotation, set relative world, I think it's world rotation we want, to the base aim rotation, and it should, I think, work. There you go. So now you can see it changing on both screens. It's a little bit out of whack because of just how camera booms work, but yeah, there you go. That's how you do that. Okay, and go to the client view. So the base aim rotation is the thing that's replicated, not the control rotation. Just need to move that across there. But yeah, I mean, I can explain Josh Works roughly how it works. So again, think back to what we've got going on over here. It's very similar in the sense that you want to show the UI on the screen. So you have to tell the clients to see the UI, but then every time something updates inside that contents there, you need to update and refresh your version of the UI. So you just need to make the bindings happen on that side of things. You can probably try and figure it out after that, but we can try that another time in a lot more detail. But it works similar to how we did the minigame. You walk into it, you tell the client's controller, hey, show the UI for this thing. Yeah. One thing I done for Mimic as well that you may not realize you could do quite easily. So for example, I have in the game multiple player controllers, multiple player states, multiple game modes, game states for things like the menu screen, the lobby screen, things like that. Especially lobby screen, because let's say I want the player to be able to set their nickname and keep their nickname across the whole entire thing, and I want to access that nickname no matter what. I just made a parent player controller for my whole game, and I made children of this for the lobby, for the game, for the thing, and so it made it a bit easier to manage that sort of stuff too. So yeah, I did that there. But yeah, online replication, there's tons of stuff to. We didn't even go over the technical optimization things, but for the most part, that is the common questions I see a lot of people asking about when it comes to replication. For things like sound animation, remember it's just the event that's replicated, not the actual sound or not the actual animation. So think about that and how you trigger that there. How do you know when to replicate? So you replicate when you want everyone else to see that stuff. If you want other people to know the difference, yeah, it'll be replicated. Okay, if everyone needs to see it, replicate it. If only you want one person to see it, you don't have to replicate it. Is first person different to do the flashlight replicate up and down? Nope, exactly the same. You just don't have to do the spring arm stuff. You don't have to do like turn off the inherits or anything like that, because you're not using a spring arm. Could you give an example when and when not in an RPG context for replication? So there may be some things like let's say you're doing an MMO, you may want to replicate the area of effect that's going to take place, but you may not want to replicate all the effects that your one is doing. But you want other people to see it instead. That way, you'd like turn on some effects that would replicate and some that wouldn't replicate. That could be a thing you do there. If the player has a buff which makes them blind and it sort of like darkens their screen or put something in front of their screen or whatever, or change their post-processing somewhat, that's not going to be replicated. That would be singular. All your inventory stuff and skill tree stuff, that won't be replicated because you don't need other people to see it. Yeah, if other people don't need to see it, you don't need to replicate it. So one of the questions I always get asked is, how do you replicate your inventory across so other people can see it? And my question to them is like, when would you ever want your other players to see your inventory? And you think about most games, you don't ever do that. You totally could if you want to, but there's no need. So try to think about like what's worth replicating, what's not worth replicating. And there are things you can turn off replication wise when they're not doing anything. So for example, in Mimic, the object doesn't get replicated by default, it gets woken up. So for example, this box over here, there's no point in replicating this the whole entire time. So on active begin overlap on switch has authority, I can tell this thing to wake up and not be dormant anymore. So if you go to class defaults, you say replicates is on, but it's not always relevant. And your net dormancy, you'll make it say dormant, all for everyone. Okay. And then when active begins overlap, you can make it set net dormancy to be awake. Yeah, so now it's going to replicate everything across. And then when it's complete, we can tell it to not be dormant. So you can make a set timer and say like, hey, you're no longer going to be awake anymore. And it should still work. It just means that it's not replicating whilst it's dead. Like that, see? It still replicates once it's been overlapped. But before then, it's not replicating at all. So no point. If you're not doing anything, make it go to sleep. And then wake it up when you want to. Okay? So yeah. What's the difference between replicating and saving to a database? So saving to a database if you want that data to be persistent across your logins and across your travels. Replicating is stuff that's happening live, things that you want to see changes live happening right there and right now. Do you plan to add a new video to your AI series? Something that AI goes to a box, takes information from there. No, I haven't thought about doing that. I mean, it's quite bespoke. It's not too difficult. You just do an overlap and then just give whatever information you want over to the AI. What's your take on doing adult games to gain a stable income? Totally up to you. Yeah, depends on your own morals and what you think. No judgment here. If it works for you, it works for you. Totally up to you. Just like how I have no problem with people doing OnlyFans stuff. Like, that's a thing you can do. But it's your own personal thing. Not for me. I probably wouldn't do it. But yeah, up to you. Are there any good gas boilerplate repos? Not off the top of my head, no. But there probably are out there. I just don't know. But that'll have to do for today. Thank you for joining us for this live class on online replication. hopefully you picked up at least one new thing, or a new thing to understand better. It is a very deep subject. There's lots to it. And it's just lots of little tricks and tips you pick up along the way that you want to keep track of. So remember things like game state keeps track of all the players that are connected to it, so you can get that at any point, any time. Game mode is only accessible by the server, so bear that in mind as well. Player states are accessible to everyone, so be careful what information you put on there. You may not want people to access things like your friends list and who's on your friends list on there. So you put in stuff that's not personal to you on there. So think about things like that. And don't forget, for the replication, you need to make sure you tick the replication box, especially if you're doing replicated variables and different custom events. Functions themselves directly cannot be replicated, but the events can be. So bear that in mind as well. But that'll do for today. Thanks very much for joining us. Hopefully you enjoyed it. We're back again live next week for question time on Wednesday. So if you have more questions, do bring them along and we can answer them live then. And then next Thursday, I'm hoping. Actually, no, I won't. I doubt it'll be. I was about to say, I'm hoping we could do like a live stream of Mimic being played. I don't know if we'll be in that position yet. There's some animation stuff I'm trying to fix at the moment, so we'll see. But there'll be another live stream next Thursday as well. New videos coming out over on Patreon. New video coming out tomorrow on the channel. If you want to support the channel, head over to patreon.com/Ryan Laley, where you can type just $1. Supports the channel. So thank you very much to everyone over there who is supporting the channel over there. And the higher tiers, you can get project files and other exclusives and access to Discord stuff and all that good stuff. But that'll do for today. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for your time. Have a good night. Stay safe and have fun with making online games. Bye.